With game trailers, you can kind of expect a little exaggeration. Something that looks too good to be true most likely is, and that's normal. What isn't normal is when you get a game that didn't even come close to what you saw in the trailer. How's it going, guys? I'm Liam. This is Instant Gaming, and today we're looking at 11 games that looked nothing like the trailer. At number 11, we have The Lord of the Rings Gollum. Who else vividly remembers this upsetting release? Where the trailers pitched this stealth-focused Middle-earth adventure, and after playing Shadow of Mordor and Shadow of War, we were all so ready for another great game from this universe. But what players got felt more like a rough prototype sneaking out of Mordor unfinished. Animations were awkward, environments looked lifeless, and gameplay lacked the tension promised in its previews. The cinematic tone shown early on vanished once the controller was in your hands, and instead of a clever narrative experience, Gollum became infamous for bugs, clunkiness, and unintentional comedy. The trailer aimed for Tolkien-level drama, but the final game landed closer to an extended apology tour. In at 10, another infamous entry for the list, Skull Island: Rise of Kong. The trailers suggested a pulpy, action-packed monster adventure set in a dangerous jungle. What actually released looked shockingly bare bones, with stiff animations, empty environments, and combat that barely functioned. The visual downgrade alone felt like stepping back 2 console generations. King Kong himself lacked weight, menace, or spectacle, turning what should have been a power fantasy into an awkward slog. The trailers sold a creature feature romp. The final product felt unfinished and rushed, becoming a viral example of just how wide the gap between marketing and reality can be. Watch Dogs remains the gold standard for trailer-induced disbelief. Its original reveal dazzled with rain-soaked streets, dynamic lighting, and hyper-detailed crowds that screamed next-gen. The shipped game looked noticeably flatter, with reduced efforts and toned-down visuals across the board. While hacking mechanics were still fun, the atmosphere felt diluted compared to what was promised. Players weren't mad about the game itself, they were mad about the difference. Watch Dogs wasn't bad, but it wasn't that game. A classic case of marketing ambition outrunning technical reality. Hello Neighbors' early trailers teased a tense, clever horror game driven by adaptive AI and psychological suspense. The final experience leaned far more into chaotic physics puzzles and unpredictable trial and error gameplay. The eerie mood gradually gave way to frustration and confusion, with the neighbor feeling less like a smart stalker and more like a glitchy obstacle. What was sold as intelligent horror became messy experimentation. The concept was strong, but the execution felt wildly different from the focused fear originally promised. Curious, creative, but nothing like the players were expecting. In at number 7, we have Cyberpunk 2077. The trailers promised a revolutionary RPG set in a living, breathing, futuristic city. At launch, many players instead found broken systems, missing features, and performance issues that shattered immersion. Visuals varied wildly depending on platform, and gameplay mechanics teased in marketing felt underdeveloped or absent. Night City looked incredible in trailers, but struggled to function in reality. While updates eventually redeemed much of the experience, the initial contrast was impossible to ignore. Few games have ever showcased such a dramatic gap between promise and launch day reality. And speaking of games from CD Projekt Red, in at number 6 we have The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt. The early footage shows darker lighting, thicker forests, and more dramatic visual effects than what players saw at release. Environmental density and lighting were scaled back, leading to noticeable comparisons online. Unlike many others on the list, however, the final product won people over almost instantly. The storytelling, world building, and quest design were so strong that most players quickly forgave the visual difference. It didn't look exactly like the trailer, but it played better than almost anyone expected, softening the blow of those early downgrades. Halo 5's marketing campaign was a masterclass in misdirection. Trailers teased a dark, morally complex story centered on conflict between Master Chief and Locke. Players expected betrayal, mystery, and emotional stakes. The actual game delivered a much safer, more straightforward narrative that barely resembled the marketing tone. While the gameplay felt polished, the story disconnect left fans confused and disappointed. Halo 5 didn't just look different, it felt different. What was sold as a bold narrative shift ended up being one of the franchise's most controversial storytelling misfires. At number 4, we have Redfall, and its trailers painted a stylish, personality-driven co-op shooter full of vampire chaos and arcane flair. What launched felt unfinished, empty, and oddly lifeless. Enemy AI barely reacted, the open world lacked meaningful activity, and co-op systems felt undercooked. The vibrant energy shown in trailers simply wasn't there. Redfall didn't evolve between preview and released, it regressed. The gap between expectation and reality was so stark that it overshadowed everything else. This is a textbook example of a game that looked confident in marketing but arrived deeply unprepared. I remember streaming Redfall when it was released, and I was extremely disappointed. The biggest thing about this game was this NPC's hands.
Whoa, look at those hands!
In at number 3, we have Unknown 9 Awakening. The trailer hinted at a mysterious, story-rich, supernatural adventure with cinematic flair. What players encountered felt far smaller in scope and ambition. The gameplay was repetitive, the world lacked depth, and the narrative failed to live up to its intriguing setup. The polished, enigmatic tone of the trailers didn't survive the transition to hands-on play. Instead of a bold new universe, the game felt like a concept stretched too thin. It wasn't broken, it just wasn't that compelling. And it wasn't the narrative-driven experience that the marketing suggested. Early Rainbow Six Siege trailers showcased massive destruction, cinematic breaching, and dynamic firefights that felt almost scripted in their intensity. The final game pivoted towards tight, competitive multiplayer with controlled destruction and esports balance. While it became widely successful, it wasn't the sandbox chaos originally advertised, and the trailer fantasy and the final design philosophy lived in different worlds. Siege didn't fail, it transformed. Players didn't get the cinematic shooter they expected, but they did get one of the most enduring tactical multiplayer games ever made. And finally, at number 1, we have The Last of Us Part 2. So The Last of Us Part 2 didn't just differ from its trailers, it actively deceived on purpose. Characters were swapped, scenes were altered, and story beats were rearranged to protect major twists. Visually, the game delivered exactly what was promised, but narratively blindsided nearly everyone. Players expected one journey and were given another entirely. Love it or hate it, the trailer misdirection was deliberate and bold. Few games have manipulated expectations so carefully, making the final experience feel shockingly different from what marketing led players to believe. And that is 11 games that looked nothing like the trailer. What game trailers let you down? Let me know down in the comments. So for all things gaming, don't forget to subscribe to Instant Gaming, and for great deals on games, you can check out our website at instant-gaming.com. And as always, thanks for watching.